You put on a uniform for work today, or something close to it. A badge, a lanyard, a name tag that tells everyone what role you play before you say a single word. You didn't think much about it, but the real answer to why that uniform changes you is far stranger than you'd guess. In 1971, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo built a fake prison in the basement of Stanford University. He picked 24 ordinary young men, healthy, stable, no criminal record, no history of violence. He flipped a coin. Half became guards, half became prisoners. Then he stepped back to watch what happened. He expected it to take 2 weeks. Something happened in a day. By day 2, the guards had started punishing the prisoners for sport. Push-ups as punishment, sleep deprivation, standing in lines and being screamed at for arbitrary reasons. One guard began speaking in a slow, mocking Southern accent, inventing rules on the spot just to watch the prisoners scramble to obey them. He wasn't told to do this. Nobody handed him that character. He built it himself, in real time, out of nothing but a badge and a pair of mirrored sunglasses. By day 4, one prisoner had a breakdown so severe they had to remove him from the study. He was sobbing, shaking, screaming that he wanted out. And here's the detail that should stop you cold. The prison had no locks, no real bars. Any prisoner could have walked out the front door at any time and simply gone home. Almost none of them did. Somewhere between the coin flip and the 4th day, the role had stopped being a costume. It had become who they were. Zimbardo shut the whole thing down after 6 days. It was supposed to run for 2 weeks. For 50 years, this study has been taught as proof of something deeply uncomfortable, that ordinary people, given a uniform and unchecked power, will slide into cruelty almost automatically. That the line between a decent person and a monster is thinner than any of us want to believe. It became one of the most famous experiments in the history of psychology. It shaped how we understand prisons, war crimes, workplace bullying, even genocide. But here's where the story gets stranger. Because the study you were taught in school may not be the study that actually happened. In 2018, a French researcher named Thibault Le Texier got access to the original audio recordings, archived notes, and interview transcripts from the experiment. What he found didn't match the legend. The guards weren't spontaneously discovering their inner tyrants. They were being coached. Zimbardo's own staff, acting as prison superintendents, could be heard on tape actively encouraging guards to be tougher, to lean into cruelty, to escalate. One guard later admitted, decades afterward, that he was simply doing what he thought the researchers wanted. He was performing a role for an audience, not spiraling into an unscripted evil. So which version is true? The one where ordinary people naturally become abusive when given power, or the one where people become abusive because they're subtly told, again and again, that this is what's expected of them? This is where a very different kind of study becomes important. Two psychologists named Alex Haslam and Steve Reicher tried something almost nobody had dared to attempt. They recreated the prison experiment, but stripped out the coaching. No superintendent whispering instructions, no script, just the same setup. Guards, prisoners, a locked structure, filmed for the BBC in 2001. And the guards did not spontaneously turn cruel. Some tried to lead, some refused to enforce the rules at all. The prisoners, in fact, began organizing and pushing back, eventually undermining the guards' authority almost entirely. The difference wasn't the uniform. The difference was the instructions hiding underneath the uniform. Which brings you back to the badge on your desk, or the lanyard around your neck, or whatever version of a role you step into every single day. You've felt this shift before, even if you never called it by name. The version of you that shows up at a family dinner is not quite the version that shows up in a work meeting. Neither is the version that shows up refereeing a kid's soccer game, or working the door at a bar, or wearing a name tag behind a customer service counter. You didn't choose that shift consciously. Something about the costume did it for you. This isn't only about prisons and guards. Stanley Milgram, another psychologist working just a decade earlier, ran a study where ordinary volunteers were told by a man in a lab coat to deliver what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to another person in the next room. Most of them kept going. Not because they were cruel by nature, because someone in a coat of authority told them it was fine and they deferred. The lab coat did the same work as Zimbardo's mirrored sunglasses. It signaled, someone else is responsible for what happens here, you are just playing your part. That's the real discovery hiding underneath 50 years of retellings. It was never really about a hidden monster inside ordinary people. It's about how easily a role, reinforced by the expectations of people around you, can quietly override your own instincts. You don't need to be told directly to behave a certain way. You just need to sense, again and again, what the people in charge seem to want from you. Most people, most of the time, will bend toward that signal without ever noticing they've bent at all. Think about the last time you changed how you acted because of what you assumed someone expected of you. Not because they told you outright, because you read the room and adjusted. A stricter boss, a judgmental relative, an audience you wanted to impress. You didn't need a script taped to the wall. You absorbed the unspoken instructions the same way those guards did, and you became a slightly different version of yourself without ever deciding to. This is also why the debunking of the myth matters more than the myth itself. Because if cruelty were simply lurking, dormant in every ordinary person, waiting for a uniform to release it, you'd have very little control over it. But if it's really about subtle social pressure, about picking up on cues and expectations, then you have far more power than you think. You can notice the signal. You can ask yourself, in the moment, whether you're acting from your own values or from what you assume the room wants. That question alone is often enough to interrupt the slide. The guards in the real, uncoached version of the prison study didn't automatically become cruel. Some of them resisted the role outright. That detail rarely makes it into the popular retelling, but it might be the most important part of the entire story. It means the outcome was never fixed. It was never inevitable. It depended on what was being modeled around them and on whether they were willing to notice it. So the next time you put on that badge, that lanyard, that uniform, that role, pause for half a second longer than usual. Ask yourself what version of you is about to walk through that door, and whether you're choosing it or simply absorbing it from everyone standing around you. You put on a uniform for work today, or something close to it. This time, maybe you'll notice exactly what it's asking you to become. Let me know in the comments, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe if you want more of this every week.